Dying Light 2's gameplay loop is a little bit rough around the edges. Having spent almost 400 hours playing this game, I have several concerns and suggestions that I want to address, in the hopeful event that Techland can make changes and improve the game as a whole. The most pressing matter for me is how Dying Light 2 handles its physics, or really, its lack thereof. See, Dying Light 2 puts an emphasis on animations over physics. Here's what I mean. I'm currently fighting a volatile tyrant, but as it dies, its body's dangling right over the edge. It should fall over, right? But since it's in its death animation, it doesn't actually ragdoll off the cliff until the animation has completely ended. Now you might be thinking that I'm being picky and this isn't a big deal. But this doesn't just happen when the tyrant is dead. Whenever the tyrant tries to pounce you, it will never fall off the edge even if it lands past it. It's literally floating in the air right now. Let's compare this to Dying Light 1, a game that gets physics and ragdolls right. Enemies in Dying Light 1 can trip over each other, struggle with slopes, and fall off edges to their deaths. Whether the player is in a hard to reach spot, there's tons of debris in the way, or simply a crowd shoveling and pushing over each other, causing each other to fall, the world and the entities within react more organically, not tied to animations. Hell, this even happens to volatiles. This next clip highlights the great physics sandbox that Dying Light 1 offers, including ragdolls, reactions from kicking, grappling, tackling, running into them, or even just jumping into them. Enemies are falling and tripling and stumbling into spike traps and killing them. Speaking of spikes, Dying Light 1 enemies get impaled and stick to them nicely, and it's quite satisfying. Dying Light 2 sorta gets spikes right. Sometimes enemies stick to them, other times they just seem to collapse to the ground as soon as they touch them. The takedown animation from above is really disappointing. It's very conditional. You have to be above an enemy, and then press an interaction button once it shows above their head. Once you press that button, all control is taken away from the player, and you just have to watch the entire animation play out. It's unrewarding and unsatisfying for gameplay. Sure, you can mix things up a little bit by using it from places like a glider or something, but other than that, it's very, very limited. In Dying Light 1, it's quite different. The player has complete control mid-air and they can choose who to land on and where. Because you only need to be above an enemy, you could do so many combos with this and be very creative. You can even do crazy stuff like this. Another annoying thing is that enemies seem to instantly stand up after you hit them on the ground, instead of ragdolling and falling back over. It's unsatisfying and unrealistic. And this is a regular occurrence, just look at this clip. You can't even effectively use physics as a weapon here. Falling on enemies would result in a stumble at best. In the first game, you could easily fall on top of an enemy to ragdoll them and finish them off. or even just use the door as a battering ram to knock zombies over. What makes things worse is that this focus on animations over physics affects the player as well. Just look what happens when the tyrant hits me. I was so surprised when this happened that I had to open photo mode and take a screenshot. Instead of falling off like I should, I'm stuck in the knockback animation and will float in the air until that animation is finished. This is what it looks like when you actually fall afterwards. All in all, I think these clips can speak for themselves. Dying Light 2's emphasis on animations greatly hurt the game's sandbox and gameplay loop, as it streamlines players with how they interact with the environment and how the environment reacts to them. Dying Light 1 set the bar for a zombie sandbox, and it's disappointing to see that Dying Light 2 failed to even meet that. This is the most important aspect of Dying Light 2 that needs to be changed for the better, and I hope this message gets to Techland so everyone can get a better gaming experience. Thanks for watching.